I don't know how long we drove. I had been so determined to not let my guard down, but I dozed off pretty fast. Even if I was still cold and wet, the car was warm, and Jack didn't make small talk. The hum of the power cell lulled me to sleep, broken up by dreams of gunfire and fractured rainbow light. At some point, I woke up sort of slouched down in the seat with Jack's coat draped over me. It took a moment to realize where I was, much less remember how I got there. Still groggy, I sat up. The pain in my head had faded to a dull throb at the back of my skull. My eyes were weirdly sore for some reason. I rubbed at them as I squinted at the passing scenery in the windows. We had made it to a habitable area.
You awake back there? I'll take that as a sort of.
Where are we? My voice was hoarse and my words a little slurred. I felt like I had the worst hangover imaginable.
Looks like we're somewhere in Arcalis?
I let out a soft groan. Yeah, I figured we were pretty far from home, but that was on the very edges of New Albion, practically in Cerna at this point.
I was going to stop somewhere soon. A late-night cafe or something.
I struggled to get myself awake when he said that. Why?
I'd like us to be able to sit and talk for a bit. Face to face. And frankly, you look like you have a pretty bad case of psi fatigue. Probably would be good to get some food in you. Besides, I figure a bathroom break is in order. We have a long trip ahead of us.
What's psi fatigue?
From overuse of psi. You have the classic symptoms. I reckon you have a headache the size of the triad right now. Mind fog, elevated heart rate.
Well, the headache is a little better.
Sleep will help a bit, yeah.
What if the others find us?
We've been driving for 2 hours, taking a slightly roundabout way back. I'm not sure we're still being tracked at this point. Hopefully not.
That didn't instill a lot of confidence. I watched buildings and lights slide past, mind sort of vaguely on what my next move would be. Where would we go from here? What would I do? Maybe this would be my chance to separate myself from Jack and strike it on my own. But even if I did, what then? I sighed again, rubbing at my sore eyes. I still can't connect to the net.
Yeah, that could be because someone subjected you to a nano-scrambler. Could just be that your psi messed it up. That can happen when your nanosystem isn't equipped to withstand a psi-burst like the one you unleashed. I've never seen one of that magnitude. For an untrained Esper to do that, you're lucky you didn't give yourself permanent brain damage.
Psi-burst. Jack seemed to have spotted a good place to stop because he slowed and turned into the car park of an empty cafe. He came to a stop, then changed his mind and drove around the building to park in the alley behind it.
Don't know what it is.
No, I know. I just didn't intend to release anything like that. And how did you even know about that? You weren't in that building.
I had tracked you there and was outside when it collapsed. I saw the distortion trail you left behind when you teleported. That's how I managed to find you later on.
Jack hadn't hidden it from me that he'd been looking for me, but it was still unnerving to hear all that. How long have you been following me around like this?
Let's head inside, Morgan. I promise I'll explain everything.
He opened the door and got out, stretching the kinks out of his back. I followed suit, wincing as soon as my feet hit the ground. My knees felt less than steady, and I grabbed at the car, which wobbled uncertainly under the sudden weight.
Watch out!
He reached for us both. I instinctively jerked away from him, the air crackling with energy. And every light, horn, and alarm in his two-seater lit up like crazy. I clapped my hands to my ears as Jack fiddled with the controls desperately to shut it off.
Stop it!
I don't know how! Jack let out a growl of frustration and grabbed my shoulders, squeezing just enough to get my attention.
Come on. Deep breaths. If you release this much energy, even that asshole Magnus might get a lock on this location. And if he doesn't, the bishops will. Then they really will track us down. You have to get a hold of yourself.
I took several slow, wheezing breaths as I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to not do what I was doing to set the car off. It was hard to relax with the alarms shrieking at us the way they were. Not to mention that the screaming pain in my head was back. But the instruments began to die down one by one.
Good job. Just keep breathing slowly and focusing on my voice.
Easier said than done. But I did my best until finally the noise stopped and I could open my eyes again without feeling like I would inadvertently blow something up. Ugh.
You okay?
I feel really dizzy.
I'll bet. Let's get you inside, Butterfly.
He wrapped an arm around me, and this time I didn't pull away, if only because I needed the extra support to stay upright. As the automatic door slid open and we stepped into the warm cafe, Jack gave me a half-worried and half-amused glance.
So, I've been wondering this for a while now, but where the hell are your shoes?
No idea. I think I lost them when I teleported. I lowered my voice even though no one was around. It looked like a place with an actual kitchen in the back. Whatever staff were on shift must have been back there. There weren't any other customers.
Maybe we can do something about them later. I don't have any extras on me, though.
It's fine. It's not like I'm expecting to have my wardrobe needs taken care of. For now, it was enough that he got me out of that place. Jack navigated us to a table. I sat and tucked my feet out of view. Jack looked around as he took the seat across from me.
Cozy.
I hugged his jacket close, wishing I could curl up somewhere and sleep for 10 years. What happens now? Are you going to take me home? I knew it was a long shot. He hadn't been watching me all this time just to take me home after finding me.
You know if I do that, people will only come for you again.
I know. I hugged his jacket closer and shrank into my seat a little. Then, what do you want from me?
Well, that's obvious, isn't it? I want you to come with me.
Where? Who are you with? He seemed surprised by that phrasing, as if he hadn't expected me to have already divided the people looking for me up into groups.
I was going to take you to the court.
The court? That... I lowered my voice as someone came out of the kitchen. A curious owner, perhaps. Jack waved that way and called out to him, ordering 2 coffees. I watched the older man nod, then retreat. That cult? Jack's lips curved up to a smirk.
They're not a cult. I have no idea how that rumor got started, but they're just a community of Espers living together and keeping each other safe.
Living together where?
Delphine. It's really the only place for them.
The court, huh? I had never heard a single complimentary thing about them, and the concept of them as an innocent community of Espers didn't feel right. So you're with them?
It's not completely correct to say I'm with them. It's not like it's an organization. It's just a group of people trying to keep from being noticed.
He'd said he wouldn't lie to me, but I didn't know if I could believe that. If that's the case, then how did you find out about me?
There's a man back at the court who's adept at sensing other Espers. He became aware of you a few days ago.
And he just sent you to get me out of the kindness of his heart?
We knew that other people would seek you out. Endgame, Noir, the host.
Noir? That mafia group in Delphine?
They're pretty well known for their experiments on Espers.
Human experimentation is banned, including when it comes to Esper genome research.
Because the Mafia has a great deal of respect for the law, right?
That's horrible.
I know this may come as a shock to you, but even your own government doesn't respect those kinds of bans. There are more than a few rumors about the work the Triad is doing in that regard as well. Those people looking for you do not have your best interests at heart. I guarantee that.
But you and the court do. Why?
Because we're the same. The court is made up of people sick of being a part of this chess game between the government and everyone else. They just want to live. freely.
I studied him wordlessly. I was nowhere near adept enough with any sort of psi abilities to peek inside his mind to see anything more than he wanted to reveal, assuming that was a thing Espers could do. When we met yesterday, at the fountain...
I arrived in Sysalis yesterday and spent the better part of the day tracking you down.
Why didn't you tell me any of this then?
Well, I was waiting for the right chance. I mean, if I rocked up and told you that you had to come with me, what would you have done? You wouldn't have gone with me. It would have just scared you off. I wanted to find the right time to reach out to you. I didn't expect two kidnappers to grab you off the street like that.
Do you know who they were?
I know this will be a little tough to believe, but they were from Endgame.
Endgame, huh? Was that really true?
You don't seem surprised to hear that.
I had considered the possibility. I just don't understand why they'd kidnap me. First of all, if someone from the court will sit down and talk, why would Endgame yank me off the sidewalk and shove me in a car? They're supposed to protect people. They're basically law enforcement.
More like they're just above the law entirely. When it comes to Endgame, I can promise you they're not what people think they are. And there's a lot of things that go on behind closed doors. And in dark alleys, abandoned districts, and sometimes right out in the open. A queen-ranked Esper is rare, and they probably weren't quite counting on as many groups to know about you. Acquiring a new queen in secret would be a pretty significant trump card.
You're saying they manhandled me, terrified me, and risked my life for a trump card?
That's how things on this side work. You want to stay on top, you need trump cards to do it.
But isn't that because they're always trying to keep groups like Crimson and Noir at bay, without stepping on the government's toes? And maybe even the court, too. Just because I haven't heard of you people doing anything horrible doesn't mean you don't.
So you're fine with how they handled this?
Of course not! I didn't know. My head was hurting too much to make judgment calls about this right now.
I know it's a lot to take in. And you'll have to forgive me. Endgame may be heroes to people on this side of the world, but where I'm from, they're just part of the problem. When the government is corrupt, maybe it needs its toes stepped on a little.
I pressed my fingertips against the bridge of my nose, squeezing my eyes shut. I didn't know what to believe about any of this. Even if Jack was telling the truth, that doesn't mean going with him was the best option. Endgame was still Endgame, and the court was still some weird group off in another country. And if I said I didn't want to go with Jack, would he even let me go? I had no idea.
Look, I'm going to step away for a few minutes. Go to the restroom. Our coffee should be out soon.
He stood and shot me a faint grin as he started away.
And the car requires voice authentication to unlock, so don't even think about trying to steal it.
I shot him a scowl as he left me at the table and disappeared through a door on the other side of the restaurant. I laid my head on the table and shut my eyes. What was I supposed to do now? How was I supposed to plan my next move? My head was hurting too much to think about it clearly. I just didn't know if I could trust Jack. The whole bit about the court was both confusing and worrying. They didn't have a good reputation no matter what he said. It's true that Sysalis may not get the entire story when it came to news out of Delphine, but I'd heard nothing good about the court. I couldn't imagine myself becoming part of that group. Hold on just a sec, guys. I thought I saw something flying out of the corner of my eye, and... No, I don't. Well, if you hear a scream, the fly got me. Besides, did I actually read the last thing? I can't remember. I couldn't imagine myself becoming part of that group. Besides, I thought that guy from earlier today, was with them. And that made me worry about it even more. Jack seemed level-headed, but could I really trust that he wasn't lying to me? As far as I knew, he wasn't from the court at all. He could be with any group. It would be stupid to believe him just because he'd helped me one time. On the other hand, he'd said Caleb and Ari were from Endgame, and I couldn't come up with a single reason to lie about that. Well, maybe to make Endgame look bad so I wouldn't try to go to them. What they'd done seemed unconscionable, but maybe they had a reason. Maybe it was to protect me from people like Jack. Endgame was a group I knew and could trust. Whatever else was true about them, they helped people. Jack was surely right when he implied there was more to them than what the public knew, but I struggled to believe they were secretly evil. Probably. At any rate, they had an army of Espers. It wasn't like they couldn't take over if they wanted to, yet they strove hard for neutrality. I let out a frustrated groan. I didn't even know where Ari and Caleb were. A slow tingle started in my feet and made its way up my legs. At first I thought it was just because I was finally warming up. But no, my heart started pounding and there was a sudden intense feeling of something approaching. I whirled around, standing up so fast I overturned my chair. But of course, there was nothing. This was similar to what had been happening in the abandoned district, but somehow different. There was no real feeling of being threatened, just of something getting closer. In my mind, I saw a flash of Ari here, in this cafe, looking down at me. And then it was over. The feeling was gone, and I was left trying to figure out what exactly that had been. I rubbed my throbbing head again. It felt like a dam had burst open inside me. I never used to be able to do this kind of thing. Ugh. Did this mean those two would find us soon? If that was true, what should I do? Gotta find Jack and warn him. Yes, to Crimson we go. If I didn't warn Jack, Endgame would find us. I'd be recruited, and he would probably be captured, I guess? If I went with him, it felt like there might be some glimmer of hope that I could somehow return home. Someday, anyway. It wasn't a huge glimmer, but it was there. At the very least, I might be able to start a new life in Delphine, one that didn't involve recruitment into a paramilitary organization as a high-ranked Esper. Leaving my fallen chair where it was, I headed towards the place Jack had vanished to. My heart was in my throat and my entire body was shaking. I was desperately trying to ignore the feeling that this was a terrible decision. I couldn't second-guess myself. In the end, I didn't know what lay ahead of me on either path. But this one felt right. Jack came out of the restroom right as I was about to brace myself and head in. Nearly running into me, he caught me by the shoulders, startled to see me right there. We have to leave. Now.
Why?
Caleb and Ari are coming here. I don't know when they'll arrive.
How do you know?
I don't know. I saw it. I feel it.
I understand.
He gave the cafe a careful look around and wrapped an arm around my shoulders.
We'll have to be careful. They haven't located you yet, or they'd already be here, but we don't know how much time we have.
That's it? You're not questioning it? He gave me a wry grin as he led me carefully to a nearby exit at the back of the building.
Nope. For an untrained Esper like you, a premonition like that means you're probably getting a peek at the most likely future trajectory, not some random low-chance possibility. I reckon we have a limited window for shifting onto a different future path. No time for questioning it. Their top bishops are pretty adept, but they might be having difficulty reading your movements for now. One of them definitely has better skills with reading the futures of people she knows, so that's to our advantage.
I only had a vague idea of what he was talking about, so I said nothing as he pulled a weapon from a holster at his lower back. One I hadn't even realized he had. With one arm in front of me, he pushed the door open before pulling me outside into the alley. He ushered me along to where I assumed his vehicle was. Everything was all turned around in my head, so I had no idea where we actually were at this point. I just followed him, trying not to stumble on anything. Why do you carry a gun? Aren't you some kind of Esper?
Rooks use biokinesis to enhance our physical capabilities. It's not great for dealing with enemies at a distance.
At the corner of the building, Jack paused again, carefully looking around the corner to check for anyone lurking out there, I guess. He held a small device up to his lips, whispering into it.
Unlock. Morgan, the car is not far away. We're going to run. You up for it?
Let's go. He grabbed my arm and pulled as he broke into a run towards the car. I stumbled after him, just trying to keep up. I heard the slow whine of a weapon a split second before it discharged. It hit the ground less than half a meter from my feet. And then we were at the car. Jack was throwing the door open and shoving me inside. There were more shots. Jack let out a grunt and staggered forward into the car, slamming the door shut. Something hit the side, shaking the entire vehicle. But it didn't stop Jack from starting it and slamming his foot on the accelerator.
Hold on!
To what? The entire car shook as Jack sped over a curb and veered into the narrow alley we'd just come from. Who was that?
Hell if I know. Not Endgame. They'd never try to snipe us like that.
How are these people finding us?
We're all psychics, Morgan. Some bishops have a pretty wide range. At this point, we're just lucky an army of people haven't descended on this place. I figured the lack of pursuit before meant you were emitting a reverse cage. Queen ranks are known to do that. Sort of an involuntary defense mechanism.
He made another wild turn, and I was just glad there wasn't much room to be thrown around in the back seat. I don't know what that means!
It means you're invisible to them, essentially. At least some of them. Even if a precog is looking into your future, a strong enough reverse cage would still block you out of their sight.
Then how'd that sniper find us?
Could have tracked me instead of you. Endgame doesn't know you're with me, so they wouldn't be tracking my movements. Not true for whoever was stalking you back in that abandoned sector.
Great.
I have a feeling they'll keep pursuing us until we've reached the rabbit hole, but I have friends there who will help us out.
Rabbit hole?
It's a, unauthorized entry point from Delphine into Cerna. Or the other way around. Cerna, as you may know, has a few small unused domes just off their main dome complex. They're mostly sealed off from public access.
Let me guess. You have friends who can get us in?
Yeah, and there's a particular tunnel that's a straight shot to Pythia under the Ouroboros Sea.
And Endgame just lets you go back and forth?
Endgame doesn't know about every single thing happening on this planet, Butterfly. They're still mere mortals like the rest of us. As long as we get there soon, I think we'll be fine.
I'd rather take a nap. Right here. I deserve it. My head was pounding again. My ears are hot. Is that normal for psi fatigue?
I think you're going to be fine. And I'd like to reassure you by insisting the rest of you is just as hot. But it's probably not the time.
Definitely not. I was silent a minute. Is it going to be like this forever? People coming after me?
I doubt it. Once you're affiliated with someone else, people are less likely to pick a fight with an entire group just to get the new queen on their side. Right now, you're just an easy target.
That's not comforting.
Sorry about that.
We were silent a while as Jack veered in and out of tight alleyways, but it wasn't long before we hit a long, open highway. He floored it, and I just shut my eyes and tried to not think about how fast we were going.
Hey, Morgan. Why did you tell me about Caleb and Ari?
Why are you so shocked? Weren't you trying to convince me to go with you?
Well, yeah. Just kind of thought it was going to take a little more convincing.
I guess I thought I had the best chance of finding some semblance of normalcy again if I was with you. It's obvious that everything has taken a turn, and I won't be able to go back to how things were. But when it comes to finding a way forward that at least somewhat aligns with what I've always wanted, I guess I thought I had the best chance if I took this path. Jack just laughed softly.
That's a logical approach, I guess.
People always choose the path that seems easiest. That's all. I don't want to join Endgame. I've never wanted that.
I guess that makes sense.
How long until we reach this rabbit hole?
Not long. Just brace yourself. It may get a little rocky from here on out.
Well, that's basically how this day has gone. so I guess I'm ready for it.
Glad to hear it.
We continued down the long freeway, and I just hoped beyond hope I'd made the right choice. All right, common route, Crimson, Interlude. Let's make choices. The ride was long, especially for someone exhausted and hurting all over. The headache settled happily at the base of my skull, a throbbing pain that spread around the sides of my head and down into my neck. But despite the pain, what Jack had said about the reverse cage thing made me afraid to sleep. If I was somehow doing something to hide our presence, would sleeping disrupt it? I had no idea. So I huddled in the back seat, watching the scenery blur past us, and tried to stay awake for as long as I could. After a while, everything dimmed to a haze. I didn't even know how long Jack drove. Hours, days if we were heading to the night side. There were miles of tunnels that wormed under the waste in the sea. Regardless of whether we were in an illicit one, the distance was the same. I drifted off eventually. Jack certainly had to put the car on auto and sleep for a while. We had stopped several times. There were dim recollections of waypoints, Jack helping me in and out of his car. At some point, I was certain there were other people around. I don't know who. My mind was so clouded I was barely aware of what was going on. At one point, I woke up in a panic, my mind clear enough to realize I wasn't at home. Seconds later, I remembered it all. For a long time, I sat there with my heart painfully hammering in my chest, head still throbbing. Jack didn't seem to notice me, and I slumped down in the seat again. The tunnel seemed endless. We sped along, and the monotonous hum of the car eventually lulled me back to sleep. Or at least somewhat asleep. At least, whatever else was true, I was still safe. When I woke up again, the fog in my head had returned. The throbbing was ever present. A sour taste had settled unpleasantly in my mouth, keeping company with the nausea swirling in my stomach. Jack's vehicle had come to a stop. I struggled to sit up, with the soft sound of rain in my ears. Beyond the windows was a dark and unfamiliar place. We made it. We'd really made it all the way to Delphine. There was relief, but also a strange hopelessness. With things as they were, could I even go back now? Ever? I rubbed at my face, trying to work out what was going on outside. With the door open only a crack, the voices were muffled and the bodies reduced to dim shapes. There they are. I peered out to find Jack and 3 other men. 2 were in suits, and the other... Chase? So he was one of Jack's friends? Which meant our meeting hadn't been chance any more than my meeting with Jack. The idea they'd been lurking around like that was... uncomfortable. How many other people had I met in the last few days because they were stalking me? I like that. I like that we decided to go and find Kesa because her reaction was great. I didn't like to think about that. Unsure what they were doing, I pushed the door all the way open and stumbled out of the car. Not terribly graceful, but all things considered, that was the least of my concerns. Chase glanced my way, raising an eyebrow. He looked me up and down with a frown. I was in a sorry state, I was certain, so the unimpressed look wasn't surprising. Jack shifted so he was between us. Somehow he seemed... worried.
Kesa,
Wait. Kesa? Not... Chase? He lied to me. I wasn't even shocked anymore. But why give me a fake name? What is going on here? Where are we right now?
Just hang on a second. Think you can wait over there quietly for a moment, Butterfly? We're just working out some details on where to go next.
I don't appreciate being told to stand over here and be quiet. I did my best to straighten and glare at him, despite how horrible I felt. You have no right to talk to me that way. Frankly, they were all a little blurry, and I wasn't sure I was even glaring at the right person, but I was aiming my scowl at the blue smudge I suspected was Jack's head.
That's not what I meant, Butterfly. I just thought...
I have been to hell and back in a day. I don't have to bloody well be quiet!
Morgan, if you don't calm down, we're going to get a repeat of that incident with the car earlier. And you will fall over if you use any more psi today, intentionally or not.
Well,
That's enough. I think you've updated me on everything as it is, Jack. Drawing this out further is pointless. As you can see, she's had a rough time. I was hoping to meet up with you before we got back here, but we didn't have much time for a rendezvous. Nor did we.
After a brief silence, Kesa turned to one of the two suits.
There's a blanket in the trunk. Please retrieve it for Miss Leone.
The man nodded and obeyed. I watched him warily as he went first to the car, then approached me, but all he did was hand me the blanket as he was told. Not a word from him, not a smile. I hesitated, then took the blanket from him and wrapped myself into it.
Understanding the situation in full now, I still believe we should take her to the mansion. I hear you on that one, Kay, but I'd rather have her go with me to Quartus. She clearly needs medical attention. She can get that there, and the court has the entire place locked behind a reverse cage. No one will find her. We can set one of those up at the mansion easily, but I won't have the court stormed by anyone trying to find her, including my father.
His father?
Even he's not that daring, Kesa.
I wasn't sure if I should speak up. I didn't know that I understood enough about the situation to make any kind of decision. At the same time, Jack, I knew, sort of. The court, I'd heard of. This mansion was an unknown. But going to the court meant hiding out and trying to remain unseen. A mansion felt like I'd be, I don't know, more connected to things. Maybe even in a position to call for help. But I couldn't say that for sure. What should I do? Well, we already did the mansion, so it's time to go with Jack. Do I want to proceed to Jack's route? Absolutely. I want to go with Jack. They both stopped and looked my way. I lowered my eyes, trying to organize my thoughts into something coherent. I don't know what your plans were, either of you, but my plan was to go to the court with Jack. And that's what I want to do. That's the only thing from today that feels like it wasn't a lie. Kesa frowned. I could see his jaw working as he studied me. He finally let out a soft sigh.
I'll have to come up with something to tell my father. You can tell him she needs time to recover, and that we felt it was best to keep her in a secure place, where she could lie low for a while. We don't want to risk the situation blowing up bigger than it already is, so if we can keep Endgame from knowing her exact whereabouts for a while, that'll be best. I'm not sure that will placate him, but I will do my best.
He looked my way again, his eyes startlingly cold.
You've put us through quite a lot of trouble, Miss Leone. I hope you recover well so it's worth it.
I intend to recover, but not because I care about the trouble you went to. I didn't ask for your involvement. He gave me a frigid smile.
No, but there's a good chance you'd be much worse off without it.
Kesa nodded curtly to the two suits and returned to his car. I don't think he took the rejection that well. Jack moved to my side, and I sagged against him, closing my eyes.
Let's get you back into the car.
Who were those people?
I'll explain when we get where we're going. You're still in pretty bad shape. You rested on the drive here, but at best it kept the psi fatigue from getting worse. It didn't do much for helping you recover.
I looked back as the others drove off. I hope we get there quickly, because it seems like there are a lot of things you haven't told me.
Butterfly, there's no way I could tell you all the details about the situation in the limited time we've had. You'll hear the rest of it soon enough.
He had a point, I suppose. So I settled back into my seat with a groan, wanting this stupid trip to be over. I wanted a bed. Sleep. But as the door shut and we drove off, I couldn't help but wonder where exactly I was going to end up. And what I'd learn when we got there.